after organizing this event, and then, I initially thought, wow, this would be really cool to just talk about humor as a learning tool. But I don't know why I decided to do that, because it's just a little bit daunting to start out a talk like that. So I'd like to retitle this as "Never Allude to Your Presentation Being Funny" in the title. People will be disappointed when it's not. That said, this is a serious talk indeed, and it's about science, so just go ahead and lower your expectations. Okay, so now that we're on the right page, a way to see how the world views science is to do a Google image search. So just type in "scientist," and I think this was probably, everybody could have predicted what this would have showed up. So we have a lot of people in lab coats. How many of you are doing research where you wear a lab coat? Yeah, and pipetting liquids that are primary colors from one Erlenmeyer flask to the other. So this is not really representative of how many of us do science. So there have been some active campaigns to change this, such as the Tumblr blog Looks Like Science, where people are trying to show that, hey, we dance, we go outside, we paint, we do all kinds of cool stuff. We're people. But this is only part of the problem. A more pernicious issue is the myth of the ivory tower that kind of hangs over academia. It's a widely held opinion that researchers and academics live in a state of privileged seclusion and separation. And there may have been some truth to this historically in the way that scientists interacted with the public, but I would argue that this is no longer the case. And so we can actually look at this using, well, at least from a correlational perspective, looking at Google Ngrams. And so this is basically a tool that Google just made for fun, I suppose. But it's really cool because they're scanning all of these millions of books all the time. And you can search for text strings and see their occurrence and how it changes over time as a proportion of the total corpus that they've recorded over time. So here I've input some phrases that I think will be instructive. So if we just look for the occurrence of ivory tower over time, so this is from 1950 to 2008, which is the latest date that they have available, you see that there is a bit of a decline here. But most recently, there's been a dramatic increase in word usage of public engagement, science literacy, and science communication, which also reflects the changes in NSF policy to include broader impacts in grant criteria. And so we can see that the ivory tower has come down, but it's definitely above our other metrics for what we're trying to do here, to engage the public and communicate science effectively. We don't know what the particular context of these words is, but we can generally say that ivory tower is bad, because if it's being used, it means it's relevant in some way, either positive or negative. So there's still work to be done here, and I think that the remaining steps can be accomplished through humanizing science and scientists to make it relevant to the public. So scientists are people. I mean, we're not necessarily robotic or uber logical. I mean, we have lives, we have hobbies, families. We enjoy many of the same things that non-scientists do. And sharing this does not detract from our effectiveness as scientists. I don't think anybody buys the, well, I'm totally objective argument. And so we should just stop trying to hide behind that and be a little more willing to share ourselves. So I think that this endeavor can enhance our effectiveness as communicators. So let's look at a case example with science's ambassador to the world, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who has over 4 million followers on Twitter. And what words of wisdom does he impart that people have chosen to retweet 10,000 times? If your body were bolted to the ground when Earth stopped rotating, then your head would snap off and it would roll due east. So this is just seemingly a random idea that came to him, but it's already made people consider something as elemental as the rotation of the Earth in a different way, in a very personal way. The At Martian movie, where the protagonist survives not on wit, prayer, or hope, but by sciencing the shit out of everything. So I think his effectiveness is partially because he makes people laugh as he makes them think. Humor is sort of a delivery system for information. And humor is human. It's universal. It's a universal aspect of culture. It's how we deal with little struggles, day-to-day issues, locking your keys in the car, and really big problems like global climate change and biodiversity loss, but also bizarre and mesmerizing things that should just be of inherent curiosity. And I would argue that humor is key to connecting with people. So let's just, as a case example, look at how science is being communicated by a very influential group, the Nature Conservancy. This is the largest environmental nonprofit in America, founded in 1951 with nearly $1 billion in revenue last year. And they have 300 uploads on YouTube. This is Social Blade, which is they provide metrics for YouTube usage. And they have a pretty respectable 4.9 million views. And I'll just show an example of one of their highest viewed videos. So everybody stopped and your faces are frozen. That's a highly emotive intro, right? And so it's sort of like a Terrence Malick film, like you really need to be in the mood. It's like I'm not always prepared to face the realities that movie was about to show me. So I would argue that this should not be the de facto tone when you have some production value and some effort involved in the making of one of these science communication videos. So as a counterpoint, ZeFrank, born Hosea Jan-Frank, is an entertainer and producer based out of LA. He's one person. He's best known for a YouTube series called True Facts. How many of you are familiar with this? Okay. So let's just watch an example of this.
Here are true facts about the cuttlefish. The cuttlefish is not a fish. It is a mollusk of the class Cephalopoda. The cuttlefish is a bit like a clam that millions of years ago came out of its shell and never went back. In fact, it still has a specialized shell, but on its inside, which is used for buoyancy and is called the cuttlebone. People for a long time have used this shell to carve casts for metal jewelry. These people are called cuttleboners. By me, and now by you.
So a lot of information was conveyed there. We learned about the taxonomic division of, sorry, she just flashed to 3 minutes. I have 15 minutes, or I started with 5 minutes, so that's separate in the schedule. Okay. All right. So ZeFrank is a single person. He has over 50 times as many views and 200 times more subscribers than the Nature Conservancy. So, wow, okay. So, funny things get more views. This is intuitive. Humor is utilized in serious attempts at science communication. And I don't think we have to sacrifice accuracy. I would argue that you should be creative and make the obvious joke. Humor is a common weapon of anti-intellectuals, and if you preempt them and say that duck penises are funny, but we need to study them for important reasons, we remove their power to use that as a weapon against us. We should use comedy more in our efforts to convey information, and particularly depressing issues, but can it be done? So I had the opportunity to try to answer this question at a course I took through the Organization of Tropical Studies, which Nebraska is a member of, and I would encourage you to look at their listings and take advantage of what they offer. For the first time this year, they offered a course called Telling Stories About Science, which is a crash course in science communication. And it was really amazing. Caitlin Gillespie, who's also here, attended, so if you have any more questions, ask either one of us. But you basically get a crash course in print journalism, radio/podcasting, and film from experts in these arenas over 4 days each. And we have to produce a project for each one, and I'll be sharing my film project.
What happens when you destroy a rainforest? What happens when you try to bring it back? 4 total noobs set out to answer these questions. Noemi Wonka is a PhD researcher at the University of Nebraska. She's going to teach these rainforest neophytes a lesson about plants and such.
I know that many people go no connected with the plants. You can care more about, for example, a parrot, like they look cute, something like that. But the forest is a system, so if you want to see this cute parrot, you need all these plants.
Noemi studies rainforest recovery. And like any good doctor in training, she wants to make it heal faster.
With this was a clear pasture in 1976.
Wow, it's like hard to imagine.
Noemi wants to know which species make it from seed to tree. She captures seeds as they fall into her traps. Very sneaky. Some of them look like poops. Primary forest, or old-growth forest, or even tree-beard forest. These are all just ways of saying the original forest. Here you can find exotic things like jaguars and tapirs. If humans come along and destroy it, good lord! Any forest that comes back is called secondary. Different sorts of animals inhabit this forest, and much like when you broke your arm in grade school, it'll never be quite the same.
I care about forests, and I want to save that forest. So how I can help is understanding secondary forests and try to show the people that this kind of forest is not just a place that you can just use whenever you want. It's a place that you need to save.
It looks like right now there are a lot of plants here. And this rainforest to me looks beautiful.
Yeah,
So
it is beautiful.
how is the rainforest in trouble?
Because it doesn't have all these species that should have. So in a primary forest, old-growth forest, you can see these big, amazing trees that you cannot even hug them. So, but here we still have trees that are big, but not big enough that we cannot hug them. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad forest. It is a good forest.
I was wondering if you thought the forest has a personality.
I think that the forest should be a funny person. Yeah, I think that she'll have a sense of humor and things like that. Because it's being patient with us. You know, you are kind of disturbing the forest and it's still helping us, giving us all these awesome things that we can see. Yeah, this is an important place that we should care and we should save. So it's a secondary forest, but it's working.
So what did we learn? Secondary forest is not second-rate. As the rainforests grow back over time, they offer a home for many amazing and... Jehoshaphat, look at those things! They're like little cotton balls. Anyway, what did our heroes learn?
It's a rainforest.
I love the jungle, but I should not be a field biologist.
We didn't see any toucans today.
The work that she's doing is really important for conservation on a global scale and kind of communicating the importance of these secondary forests.